All right, Chelsea fans, we are live on YouTube at the moment, or potentially in your podcast feed, because we're going to clip it and put it there later. And I think here's the thing to consider is that Chelsea just finished playing Aston Villa. We're recording and streaming right after full time, right after the emotions have boiled over at Villa Park, players going at one another's, managers unconvinced that the officials got it right on the day. Because look, it's Craig Pawson in the Premier League, Nick, and anytime he's involved, it's sure to be an absolute classic disaster.
Yeah, I put a tweet out, I think mid-second half, that Craig Pawson is hilarious, and then in parentheses, terrible. And he was again. I mean, it's been a while that I think we've had Craig Pawson as a referee, because there was a stretch of games where, he was worse than Taylor for us. And he kind of went into the shadows and then reemerged today as a deciding factor as to how this game was going to be played. And man, he is something. The whole refereeing structure in England is just something.
He's definitely a individual, as Craig put here in the comments. Pawson gives a bad name to Craig's. Craig on Craig crime happening there. He's like a Scooby-Doo villain without the mask, just operating for 90 minutes across a football pitch. But look, we're London Is Blue Podcast. We're part of the Men in Blazers Media Network, and we'll be chatting about this match. Another draw for Chelsea in a season, in an end of the season run in where we're needing wins, a match that didn't feel great in the first half because we went 2-0 down, a match that felt much better in the second half after equalizing, a match that felt like at the dying moments, whether it was a Cole Palmer chance and opportunity or an Axel Disasi goal that was disallowed, that could have twisted to be Chelsea's way, to be Chelsea's day, but we just didn't get it done at the end. And that truly, Nick, has been the theme of this season. But just immediate reaction, how do you feel about how the match went today? And are you walking away in a feeling better about where we're heading with the end of the season? Are you feeling worse? Or are you feeling about the same?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know. This was such a weird game to watch, because I think there were points in the first half, as you mentioned, that I felt the same old malaise that had washed over us so many times this season, where just mistakes after mistakes were happening, lack of effort tracking back was happening. And then in a stunning turn of events, second half Chelsea, which has been notoriously shit, has come out and done a real job against Villa in the second half. And I think you could be persuaded that we should have won this game. I take heart in that. I take heart in the fact that the team did not quit today, which I think after Tuesday, I probably expected, if I'm honest, just because of the way that result went and the lack of effort in the second half. So I think there are some positives that you can take out of this game. There are some clear issues that you can take out of this game as well. And I think when it's all said and done, a draw is probably the fair result. I think for those who were really hoping that VAR was going to do us a solid on the Disasi header, I mean, it was a clear push. We're never getting that call.
Yeah, I think the thing that people are going to call out, though, is that it doesn't necessarily feel like that is the right way to use VAR, to necessarily go back on this idea that it is a clear and obvious error. Ultimately, that is how the video assistant official is supposed to flag a situation. And it felt like in real time, the commentators called it out. And when you go back and look at it, it is a push. I think I've seen softer pushes get judged and adjudicated more difficultly. I've seen harder challenges not. And the invariable issue is if you're requiring that much luck, if you're requiring that type of single decision or single moment in a game to walk away with a result, you're maybe hoping for the wrong end outcome, though it does feel a little bit like a knife to the heart in that moment.
I think the issue I had, like when I saw it live, I pretty much gave up that was going to count as a goal, because the ball bounces. If this is a play where Badiashile shoves Carlos, and he is not the person to play the ball to Disasi for the goal. I think there's a chance that Chelsea possibly get away with it, but you move the other player out of the way to then get the assist for the goal. I could just in my mind, there's just no way that VAR is going to take a look at that the minute they send Pawson to the on-field camera or on-field screen, I should say. There's just nothing in my brain that's saying that we're going to get away with that one. And this is a way that I think you could look at this if you're a Chelsea fan, and we see many of you already here. Please send in your questions and your comments. We're going to get to a lot of these today over the next 45, 50 minutes here, but there's a way that you could look at this as a Chelsea fan and go, we're a Cole Palmer miss away from beating Villa at Villa Park for the second time this season. Villa, who almost assuredly are going to finish in the top 4 and go play Champions League football next season. How can you play like this against that team when you can't do anything against Arsenal midweek? It's a very confusing team, Dan. I don't understand what I'm watching half the time.
Yeah, your comment about the fact that the first half and second half were different, that there was a change, that there was movement forward, is bared out in the stats behind this game. So, I mean, overall, the XG on the day, 0.87 for Villa, 1.37 for Chelsea. Of course, 2 goals each, because why not? But when you look at the total shots, so Villa had 9 shots total, 4 on target. We had 21 shots. We had 5 on target, but we only had 8 shots with 1 on target in the first half. Flipped out of the second half, 13 total shots, 4 on target. Second half was much more of a kind of comprehensive, I would say, desire to attack, though a fair number of those shots kind of came from the 62nd minute forward. So like it took us a little bit to find a spot, to find an opportunity to take advantage of it in the second half. But what'd you make of the fact that, we kind of came out and were very slow, maybe not as competitive as we should have been. And it took a long time to get in this match, which has been the opposite of how this Chelsea team has played this season, which is great first halves and mediocre to relegation level second halves.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of mirrored the way that we came out against Arsenal in the first half, to be honest with you, where it was like really slow start on the back foot. And then we got back in the game right before half. And I think you could make the argument that basically from like the 20th, 25th minute on that we were the better team in the first half. We were certainly the more ball dominant team. Even Martin Tyler, a notorious not Chelsea fan, was calling out how ball dominant we were and how easy it was for us to move the ball against this Villa team who decided to essentially camp out in their own half for most of the game. I mean, it was a really weird performance from them too, because we're used to seeing them play with a lot more energy, a lot higher pressing, a lot higher of a line, typically a defensive line. So, the fact that we're able to go into Villa Park, have 72% of the ball, I think says all it needs to say. We were the ones playing. We were the ones directing play for most of the game. The first 20 minutes were a disaster, though. I mean, again, it's sloppiness. You look at the replay of the McGinn goal that really is hit off of Cucurella in. Cucurella is not even reacting to that at all. I mean, I think he starts to put out his shin and it just kind of lazily deflects off of him. And I just don't think anyone was like mentally snapped into the game at that point. And it turns out when you're not mentally snapped into the game against really high level professionals, and Villa again are going to be in playing Champions League football next year, you're going to get scored on. I mean, that is one of the true laws of Premier League football, Dan.
So one of the comments are really asking, it was amazing, or saying that it was amazing we were even in the game despite what the hell Mudryk was doing. And I think this is, as we take a look at the SOFA scores for the game, their kind of individual player ratings, they had Mudryk at a 6.8. They actually had Madueke at an 8.8 and Caicedo an 8.2. I think there's some fuzzy math here that I don't necessarily agree with, but I think Mudryk on the day being one of the worst performers for Chelsea is very accurate within some of the attempts, the long range attempts that went sky high on maybe the interchange with Cucurella at times. That left-hand side was really, really like the entirety of the game was a rough watch.
I mean, I looked at the left today, and I think it's among the very worst left-sided performances that Chelsea have had in the last 20 years. I mean, really, really, really poor. I mean, Cucurella playing midfield for most of the second half for reasons, I couldn't tell you. Good, friend of the pod, Ollie Glanville, was in our chat incensed about his positioning, which I think was fair. And then Mudryk, I mean, I think if you've listened to the podcast long enough, I think we have been incredibly patient with him. I mean, I still think the circumstances surrounding his transfer and settling into a new country amidst all of the things going on back home, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. So, like the empathetic side of me, I feel for him, but you start to see some of these performances stacked on a couple, 3, 4 in a row, where it's just there's nothing going on. There's no sense of interchange with his fellow teammates. At the end of the game, Shield just stopped passing the ball to him, Dan. Like that was something I noticed. Most of the second half, Shield opted to do a crossfield ball to the other side of the field to get that going. And it was clear that we were just directing traffic down that right-hand side because Caicedo was having such a dominant game that I just don't think we wanted to lose the ball. I don't think Shield wanted him to lose the ball and then have to run all the way back. I mean, if we're just being honest. So it's not really working, if we're honest.
Yeah, when you see that Aston Villa at home only had 29% of the ball the entire match, which is not the way that they have played the entirety of the season. I think it's going to be the lowest possession they've had in a match this season. And actually, every match where they've had sub 40%, they've had 2 wins and 3 losses out of the 5 games where they've had that. So this is goes into the draw column there. So they do like to have the ball. They do like the opportunity to take advantage of the attacking power that Watkins, Diaby, Leon Bailey, and others have for that side. It just didn't come out for this team on the day. Your point about the players avoiding passing to others, it's something I feel like I caught on to early on. We have this desire, I think, right now where we want to see individual players improve. We know that players are heading into the end of the season thinking about if the manager gets changed, if new sporting directors come in, if the whole project is under a re-review or the re-review of the re-review, that ultimately my position is not secure. And so there are some individuals who I think are playing, I would almost say, for themselves more so than the team. And so I feel like even Madueke, who gets the goal at the end, there were a lot of times where maybe he had an opportunity to pass or interchange with Palmer. That didn't happen as frequently as it could have today. You had situations where we were avoiding passing to players because there's not a belief or a faith or a trust. And I think that goes back to this whole idea that we have a manager who's got an assembled group of individuals trying to get them working on the same page. And we still haven't seen that come good for a full 90 on the regular this season, outside of some very, very few situations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think for, let's call it 60 minutes like that, the individuality thing shone through. Madueke was terrible for most of this game. I thought he slowed every attack down the right, dribbled into trouble, got dispossessed, couldn't cross the ball with his right. It's still something that he really struggles with for reasons that I don't understand because he's such a talent. I mean, he clearly has sauce to him, but he was terrible. And then look, I mean, it's a fair enough point that for the last 30 minutes, I thought they did play as a team. I thought they did gel. I thought they did pass the ball crisply to each other. I thought there was better movement. I thought there was better pressing. I mean, you look at the first goal, it is Connor and Cole pressing like hell, getting the ball, Madueke being in the right position, slotting it. It would have been a penalty on Connor either way. I think we score in that move either way, but it's good on Noni for capitalizing on an opportunity. It's something that Chelsea have clearly not done enough this year. You look at Connor's goal, thunderbolt. I mean, that thing was incredible. And so I think it's part of the frustrating aspect of watching this team for the last 9 months is that you see this good 30 minutes, this really good, where Chelsea could have easily scored 3 or 4 goals in that 30 minutes. And had it not been for Nico's inability to head the ball into the net, could have already been up by that point, potentially. And then you get the 60 minutes where it's just disjointed and kind of ugly. And even though there's possession, it's not really possession going anywhere. And that's kind of the thing, Dan, that I think, a lot of Chelsea fans are frustrated by, because there have been flashes this year, but that's all there've been. It hasn't turned into something more sustainable.
Yeah, there's a comment from Jordan in the chat talking about thoughts on Nico's performance. Seems like he always puts in so much positive work and just can't find the net. At what point does it stop becoming a mentality issue and ongoing liability? Very cruel to have another fantastic goal that I would say very, very tight on the offside decision, extremely tight. And then has a header, which should be the easier of the two chances to convert. And we know that Nico is not necessarily known for being someone who is airily dominant or someone who converts off a number of headed chances. But to get that one off the woodwork, to effectively could have been 2 goals on the day, that feels like a really rough out for him, when I felt like for the first half, he was one of the very few individuals who was trying to find space, was pushing forward when we were very compact and we were not getting out of our own half. He was the individual finding a way, finding a pathway, challenging the Villa defenders to get into space, to give him a notice so that 1 or 2 players were being drawn to him, which, should ultimately create space for others. And just, I think the thing is, you have Nico, who is a contributor and is not necessarily always consistent. And then Cole, who is a really strong contributor, but maybe was not as consistent in this match. And it almost feels like, if Nico can't get it done and Cole isn't operating at a high level, we are really, really bereft of individuals who can easily find the back of the net.
Yeah, I feel for Nico, man. I think your point is accurate that he continues to do some really tough running. He does run for the team, and that has been clear all season. I think for all the criticism of the finishing and the missed big chances, of which there are many, I think he's second worst in the league on missed big chances. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. The header is harder to miss than it is, or harder to make than it is to miss, right? I mean, all you have to do is just literally head the ball down into the goal. Martinez is nowhere near that side. It could have dribbled over the line and it still would have been a goal. And I think that for the first half, really, Villa did a great job on Palmer. They tried to eliminate him from receiving the ball in deeper lying areas and moving it up like we know he loves to do. I mean, when Palmer gets the ball and he drops back and he allows other people to push forward and he's able to connect with them, that's his ideal link up play. And I think Villa did a great job of taking that away from Chelsea in the first half. In the second half, though, everything started to roll a little bit more. Everything started to click and the movement was much, much better. Nico is a part of that movement, right? He's a part of making dummy runs and doing some of the hard work. But yeah, the end goal is that we want him scoring more frequently off of big chances. No doubt about it. I think if you're frustrated by that, you have every right to be. I do not think when we look back on the story of this season that we're going to think of Nico as a net negative to this team. I think he's still going to be a net positive with work to do.
So, question from Sion in the chat asking, are we a better side without Enzo? Caicedo and Conor cook together sitting in the middle. And I think we saw a really strong performance, even more so in the second half, from Moises Caicedo. A great goal from Conor Gallagher to, get us in a position to walk away with anything from this match. And I don't know, it's been interesting to watch now 3 games where we saw this midfield pairing do really, really well. We went away from the midfield pairing and we did very poorly. And we went back to this midfield pairing and they enjoyed playing with one another again. And I think it is a question about how are we going to configure our midfield combination moving forward, because it doesn't feel like we've got all of the right shape pieces that fit with one another. It's like we've got three different puzzle sets. We're trying to build a unified puzzle, and that just is not how the shapes connect with one another.
No, I mean, I think all competitions, Connor now has 14 goal contributions. So he got his fourth goal today in the league. That puts 4 goals, 6 assists, 2 goals in the FA Cup, 2 assists in the League Cup. So I think that math is right. I'm on FB Ref, so if someone has a better number, please correct me. But I think if you would have looked at this season, Conor Gallagher getting 14, maybe 15, 16 goal contributions by the time it's over, all comps, you would have been pretty happy with that. I think the thing that I love about this combination is just the athleticism to cover different sides of the field. I mean, it's obvious that Connor has so much of a job to do when he's in this role. He has to cover Kukurea and he has to cover for Mudryk. I mean, he's been like, really frame that up for yourselves as you're watching these games. If Connor's on the left-hand side in the pivot and Caicedo's on the right-hand side, Caicedo has a much easier job, usually. Just being honest. I think both sides relatively kind of struggled today, but like Connor has a ton of work to do and he was throwing himself about. He obviously had a couple of Connor challenges today, which I love. We should trademark that. And, I think I think a lot of people have seen John Terry's interview recently where he said he's really proud that Connor is the captain and that everyone should be a little more excited that he's a part of the squad. I take that to heart. I think Conor Gallagher has been incredible for big stretches of the season. Not all of it, but big stretches. And the midfield looks so much better. It really does. They move the ball quicker, and Caicedo, it's freed him up to be really, really good. And he was really, really good today.
Yeah, he had 11 out of 12 ground rules won, which, if you think about it in general, that's a very hard stat to do well. And I think we talked about Connor had a really good day. He won 3 out of 8. Now, he also did score off of a goal that had a 0.07 XG. So, really, really well taken in that regard. But, I think this was an example of a game where you got to see them performing in two different complementary ways to one another. When you look at the heat map for Moises Caicedo, it is bright, bright red, effectively right in the center in front of our 18-yard box, absolutely mopping up. You see Connors does have some bright spots around that, but how much further forward he got, how he was built, like he was over all areas of the pitch with lighter kind of heat areas. And then basically it is burning bright red in front of the center of our 18-yard box for Moises Caicedo. I think the question, the comment someone had was that, ultimately we were also dealing with an unhealthy Enzo. And so I think it's maybe a little harder to judge how you get that combination, or if you wanted a 3 midfielder combination to work, it might be more challenging to assess it over the last 3 to 6 months, with Enzo now heading out and, with a, kind of surgery to fix his hernia. Like, that is something that has impacted his play. He necessarily hasn't been at the top level. And ultimately, we're in a situation now where we're getting an opportunity to see what a 2-person midfield could look like, what this does if it adds on an additional attacker. I'll say it feels like the only knock on it is maybe this central role for Cole, with playing behind Nico Jackson, Madueke out right, hasn't produced the best opportunity for Cole at the moment. And I think that was the one thing where, him not playing more on the right-hand side, I think is something that we maybe would have missed, or maybe would have enjoyed a little bit more, versus playing in a more central position in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of look at the style of this game and like obviously Chelsea ball dominant, right? I think had the possession for a majority of the game, looked crisp. Looks like, for a lot of the, for especially the back line to the midfield, it looked like there was a lot of discipline there in passing lanes. Like, obviously Villa started the game kind of pressing and then really, really fell off. And so there was a lot more time and space on the ball, similar to what Chelsea had against Everton without the 6-goal contributions in that one. But I don't know, man. I think there is something here. And I know there's been a lot of rumors that Chelsea are going to sell Conor Gallagher at the end of the season. I'm just, if Paul Winstanley or Lawrence Stewart is watching this live broadcast, sign him up, sign Trevo up, get these guys in. I cannot emphasize enough where we would be without Connor this season. I mean, genuinely.
Yeah, I would hope that this is not what they're doing with their time, that they're spending more time
Dan.
scouting.
Me too.
But ultimately, if they're choosing to, welcome. We're happy to have you here. We had Rich Money Makers with this will help Gallagher getting a new contract. And I think that is still, it feels like, Nick, it should be an easy question to answer. It's like, should Conor Gallagher get a contract extension from Chelsea? The answer should be an easy yes. But it feels like we're still approaching the end of the season, 5 matches left. That's the good news. Oh, the bad news is there's 5 matches left. And we have don't feel any closer to a resolution on, are we going to keep him? Is he going to become part of the profit and sustainability rules decision to sell homegrown players to try to offset the fact that Chelsea have no more hotels to sell to themselves?
Yet, Dan, yet.
If we build one and then sell it to ourselves, I still think my idea to turn Chelsea into an incubator for startups and then to sell the startups might be something we want to take a look at.
Yeah, I think that would infuriate everybody, which would make me smile. But yeah, look, I think where Chelsea are right now is they're going to end up having to make sales this summer. I think one note on that, just in talking with those who know what's going on with the books, is look, the fact that Mason is going to count on this season's, not last season's, is going to be a big one. The fact that Matson is likely going to already be sold. I think there's some others like Lukaku who have a strong chance of being sold. Like, my hope is that Chelsea can compile a list of players that do not include Conor Gallagher to make the financial part make sense at the end of the season. And we'll see what happens.
Jake asking the question, another shaky start for Petrovic at today with a couple of rocky matches. What's next for him? I do think we've seen a couple of poor attempts at saving. And I would also say that our defense has continued to be makeshift in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, how much you want to put the blame on the fact that we're now rocking up with Trev Chalobah and Thiago Silva and, Benoit Badiashile versus some of our top choice options, Levi Cole obviously not available. We're rocking with Cucurella when you imagine you would prefer to have Ben Chilwell on there. We don't have Malo Gusto or Reece James. And so the defense is absolutely patchwork at the moment. And so I think it's fair to say you could point to that and make the case that that is a cause of some of the challenges that Petrovic has had. But I think you also could make a very strong case that his individual play has not been up to par over the last 6 to 7 matches. And the fact that we had, a former #United goalkeeper on the bench today as the backup in Ted Kurd, very, very interesting point for Chelsea at the moment.
Yeah, I think over the last few weeks, I've gone from, Petro is going to be a star and will be our number one moving forward, to I'm not 100% sure. And you complement that, Dan, with the news that Marcin Bolka, former Chelsea Academy goalkeeper, is rumored to be moving on from Nice in France and coming back to the Premier League. A dude who is absolutely huge and that Chelsea whisked away at a young age. I'm sure Chelsea youth is pulling his hair out right now at the thought of that. But yeah, I think I don't think we walk into next season having a pure number one goalkeeper. And that is, if Brandon Busby was here to talk as member of the Goalkeepers Union, I think he would probably echo that sentiment. I don't have enough from either one of our goalkeepers this season to go, that's our guy. And that's tough.
I think there's the comment here from Slen mentioning it's crazy how highly we rated Armando Broya, and now no one is looking his way. And there's a list of these players who, right now, that we watch play today, could very easily be players who are not considered part of the first team system next season. There are players who are going to be looked at as someone we want to sell or someone we want to move on for. There's only a handful, I would say, that you would argue are absolutely 100% locks to be a part of next year and to be relied upon in that regard. And I think, I mean, maybe the list starts and ends at Cole Palmer, and you could kind of, add a few on more if you'd like, but it does feel as if the number of players in our current starting 11, and also thinking about the fact that we have a starting 11 and we have an injured 11, is maybe filled with players who would not feature in the team next season. And players like Armando Broya, maybe another individual looked at as a NFL style cap casualty, or a individual that might get another chance in preseason. And, if there is a new manager, could get an opportunity to impress, could get an opportunity to be involved.
Yeah. I mean, the uncertainty rings across the board, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen at every level of Chelsea Football Club right now. You don't know if the same sporting director is going to be in place. You don't know if the same manager is going to be in place. You don't know who's going to come back, who potentially gets sold because of those previous two options. Like it's pretty crazy. I mean, the fact that he hasn't kicked on, we're talking about Broya specifically, he hasn't kicked on at Fulham is pretty disappointing. Just given, I think, where we started the season, knowing that he was coming back off of a difficult injury, and I think tried to gut out a lot of performances in the first part of the season for Chelsea. So, yeah, I think I'm just at a point where I have absolutely no clue what is going to happen starting on June 1st with Chelsea this summer.
Yeah, so I'm asking another question. Is center back more important than striker at this point, conceding far too many goals? And we are very close to having conceded the same number. This was the stat going around during the match that Jose Mourinho, Chelsea, in its first 3 seasons, conceded 61 total goals, and that Chelsea this year are at 59. And that is just absolutely indicative of how poor this team has been. And there will be an exercise that I will undergo that is going to be equally painful, which is going back at the end of the season and indicating how many of those were from an individual error. And I feel like it's going to be a much larger number than I enjoy looking at. But we find ourselves in a position where Thiago Silva is about to leave. Chalobah has been linked with interest elsewhere, playing a adjunct right back in this match for periods of time. And you have, several who are, West Fofana is missing the entire season. Levi Colwell is out injured. Maybe he gets back in at some point here. It does feel as if we will go after a center back. I don't know if it's become more important than striker. I think the question will be from a striking perspective, and Sam and I talked about this in the preview podcast, is what does it look like in terms of, is there a individual you would sign or bring in to effectively be a more seasoned head operating behind Nico Jackson, so that if he's struggling, you could put somebody in who knows how to get 10, 15 goals and be a contributor who's not going to cause a little bit of a mess if he's not the starter on the team.
I would just counter both of those points and say that we need a left back. I think we're in that.
This Lewis Hall guy is really good.
Yeah, I think we're in that territory right now, though, honestly, because Chilwell hasn't been healthy for multiple seasons on end, just like Reece. Cucurella clearly not the solution there by any means. Motson definitely getting sold. I mean, you look at the goals against in our kind of group, right? United 51, Newcastle 55, West Ham 65. Oof. Chelsea 59, Wolves 55, Bournemouth 60, Brighton 54. We're definitely in the mid-table. I mean, even Villa and Tottenham have shipped 52 and 49 respectively. Everyone in the top three is 26 for Arsenal, 32 for City, and 36 for Liverpool. I mean, there's a clear difference when it comes to defending, right? If you're really clinical on the other side, which we are clearly not, then you can get away with a shaky defense, but we are not.
We had Christian asking, is it as simple as saying the medical department and player health improving changes the outlook? Which I would say, if at a simple level, if everything just goes directionally, you could say yes. He says, I don't think this fixes everything, but clearly has been the largest problem. Player unavailability has been a major issue through the course of the season. I think there's also a question about the soft tissue injuries, which have persisted over multiple seasons now, but seemingly the re-injury that's occurring can also potentially be linked to how we're preparing, the training regimen we put in place, the way that the coaching team is working with the medical team, and if those individuals are or are not on the same page. And so this goes back to this idea, Nick, that we've heard from Naz, we heard from Matt, that ultimately there is a review that goes on at the end of the season, but this has to be a absolute circled item for top discussion, because when you have hundreds of millions of pounds of players who are unavailable for large stretches, who get re-aggravated injuries, who get played into the red zone because we don't make the decision to say, hey, Malo Gusto has played maybe more than he should have over a period of time, maybe could have come out early as we were absolutely smoking Everton to make sure he'd be good to go the whole City match and would be better for an Arsenal match, might be something that comes directly under the purview of the manager and saying, hey, this is something that can't happen because these assets, these players need to be in a position to help you win. And we're going to supply you with those players. But if you don't put them in a position to be healthy, we can't come back and defend you if you're the one whose regimen, whose training efforts are getting them into the injury issue in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it does snowball on you, right? I mean, you get a couple of injuries and then you have to force other players into those roles. They get extended time, they have more chance of getting injured, so on and so forth. And I realize that every team goes through injuries. I'm not saying that they don't, but we are clearly on the wrong side of this. I mean, it is outrageous how injured Chelsea players have been the last 3-4 seasons. And furthermore, it's a combination of the medical team getting that sorted out, having the best nutritionists, specialists, trainers, all that sort of stuff within the club, and that should absolutely be a bare minimum expectation. But it's also down to the manager's training methods too. I mean, we heard the infamous Seb Pochettino training methods were going to make these players super fit and being able to withstand all comers. This team can barely get across the line in a season where they haven't played European football. They've gone deep in the cups, sure, no doubt, but we also had the easiest possible competition in most of the cup games that we played this season. And it really makes you wonder if Chelsea are able to sneak Europe, which doesn't look likely at this point, if that would just be more detrimental than good, because I don't think this team could do a full Premier League season, domestic cups, and Europe with the way that they are currently set up. I don't believe that they would make it through the season. I think we'd be playing academy kids starting in February.
So I do want to talk about the fact that Pochettino has some quotes out now. Again, we started this live stream right after halftime, and he did have a comment to TNT, and this was about the officiating and VAR. So I don't want to talk bad about the referee, but it is unbelievable. It's ridiculous. This is two Chelsea managers, unfortunately, Emma Hayes and Pochettino, both having to say the quiet part out loud that officiating sucks in general over the last 24 hours. Not a great day for all Chelsea senior teams as it relates to officiating. He continued by saying, it's difficult to accept this type of thing. In the semifinal, I was humble, and the VAR said no penalty. In this situation, it is really painful as it has damaged English football, the image.
Any lies in there, Dan?
No lies detected, Nick. No lies detected.
He's true. I mean, English refereeing is the bottom of the barrel, and I saw a clip from Mark Goldbridge this week that I think. Look, is he my number one go-to YouTuber? No, but I do think he's pretty good at entertainment at times, especially when United lose to Chelsea and on a last-second winner. That was pretty great. He came through, and I think he said something that to me really resonated this week, and that was that the Premier League's not the best league in the world right now. No way we're the best league in the world. There's so much average to below average football being played across the Premier League right now. This is nowhere near the dominant league that it was or that it used to be. And more than that, the refereeing has made it comical at times. And look, I think Pochettino is wrong about the call that I think he's referencing where the Disasi header gets overturned and isn't given as a goal. I think it's a pretty clear shove from Badiashile. I love Chelsea. I want Chelsea to win everything. I don't think if we were on the other side of that, we would be furious if that was given. So, just be honest about it. I don't think it was the wrong decision necessarily, but the referee also got a ton of decisions wrong in this game leading up to that final decision that didn't quite go our way. I mean, the standard is so bad and there's no accountability for any of it. And I think if you're a fan and you pay good money, and we know plenty of Chelsea fans who go home and away every week to watch this team, this really weird version of Chelsea Football Club. And even when Chelsea are on top and playing well, you have, nonsense refereeing get in the way of what could be a result for the club, in a time where they desperately need it. I'd be furious going home and away watching the standard of refereeing every week. It is so, so poor, Dan.
Yeah, it is the moment where, and he has been more passive in the way he responds in the game. You saw the way that Unai Emery celebrated the goal, the energy, the excitement that he had, definitely more of an animated figure. And I'm not asking, or I'm not necessarily hoping that someone has to put on a show and operate differently than who they are as a person. I don't think that's what I'm asking for. But what I am saying is I do think it is a matter of showing up for your players, showing up for your supporters, showing up for the club, and finding a way in that feels comfortable to you, that shows a little bit more intensity, a little bit more disappointment rather. The comment that he had about VAR afterwards, I mean, he's showing more intensity in the post-match conversations than he did during the game. They said on VAR, the referee didn't see the action, but then VAR changed the decision. If the referee is saying he was fouled, then goes to check and sticks with the decision, okay, no problem. But he didn't say it was a foul. It was a challenge that happens so many times in football. In this moment for us, it was massive for 3 points to have success and to get into European competition for next season, which again is another no lies detected situation. And Christian, as the comment you point up here, is it's implemented far better in Germany. We are continuing to see the implementation of VAR in the Premier League this season be something that has not always does not feel like it really goes in Chelsea's favor too frequently, but doesn't really go in the favor of enjoying a football match and understanding how to how to celebrate a goal, how to enjoy it as a sport. It definitely feels like it is detracting more than adding.
Yeah, I mean, here's a pox on the Premier League refereeing association, the PGMOL. The MLS is better on VAR than the Premier League.
That sounds like American bias there, Nick. I don't know.
It's really not.
I don't know if the listeners are going to let us get away with that one.
Anyone who's watched MLS VAR will know that it is a better implementation. UEFA's VAR at times is better. Now, obviously, the Chelsea women today have a huge bone to pick, and I think some flagrant corruption on that side of the house with Barcelona again. But I just it's ruining the league. It's ruining the sport. I've said multiple times. It's a £1 billion league, and it's 10-cent referees that are out there. You have to raise the standard. You have to make these guys full time. They have to go through additional training. The technology has to be implemented correctly. And I think to your point on Poch, Dan, just to come back to that, I said after the show that we did after the semifinal, if I were Poch and I saw that handball from Grealish, I'm getting a red card in that moment. I'm choosing that moment because that is such an injustice that this team didn't have an automatic penalty right after that, called live, shouldn't have even had to go to VAR. That's how egregious it was. That's the moment where I would have pushed the limit and gotten a red card, been sent off, been sent down the tunnel. That would have been worth it. I think Chelsea fans would have been like, hell yeah, man, way to fight for the team. Doing it in the press conference after doesn't do anything for us at all. It doesn't. In fact, it just leaves you open personally to more liability and more frustration with the authorities. So I think that's the place where I am. Like I want to see it more on the field, less in the media, less in the interviews.
So this draw, as we kind of take a look at rounding out the conversation as relates to what's going on at Chelsea, we now sit at 48 total points, still in ninth position. We are a point behind West Ham with 2 games in hand. We have behind us in 10th position Wolves. They are on 35, so they also have 2 games more played on 46 points. Where we would like to end up is somewhere closer to that 6th position, but it is becoming ever more challenging when Man United sit at 54 points with 34 matches played, and Newcastle 53 points with 34 matches played. Very, very difficult to concede the idea that Chelsea are going to jump up into a European spot, but not all hope is gone, but it is definitely fading away at this moment. We take a look at the other results around the league for this round. I mean, Man City waxes Brighton 4-0. You had the West Ham and Liverpool draw 2-2, which was nice, I would say. At least removing one of those teams from contention for a title. Absolutely. We could have been the team that made sure Klopp won nothing in the last season, and we definitely did not do our job.
Screwed it up, Dan. We screwed it up.
Other results include Crystal Palace and Fulham 1-1 draw, Burnley and Man United 1-1 draw, the 5-1 victory for Newcastle over Sheffield, which ensures that Sheffield has been relegated and will go back down to the Championship next season. Wolves beat Luton 2-1, Everton beating Brentford, huge result for them, 1-0, and our result, which was 2-2. So that is kind of how it stands at the moment. And Chelsea will be back in action soon, not necessarily too soon, this Tuesday against Tottenham, which is going to be another big match. And
Thursday now.
Thursday.
Yeah.
A day with a T. Ultimately, Chelsea now have an opportunity to kill some of their dreams of potentially qualifying for the Champions League. That would be something that we could take away from that. Could be an opportunity for Pochettino to show up against his former club. But how are you feeling as we end this kind of conversation and head into looking forward to our next match?
Absolutely no idea, Dan. I have no idea how to feel about this team. I have no idea what they're going to show up as. Look, obviously, it would be great to be able to beat Spurs at home, kind of restore that dominance that we have over them at the Bridge, and beating Spurs is a good day, right? So I think let's just take it one game at a time and see where it goes. I mean, I think this was not a bad performance today. I think it started off pretty rough, and it got back to being pretty good. It could have been a win. I think a draw is probably the fair results if you're looking at the whole game. Spurs Thursday will be interesting. It'll be a test to see if this team can put 2, decent teams to the sword and come back from that embarrassment that happened on Tuesday at the Emirates. So I'm intrigued to see what will happen.
Yeah, definitely still things to play for, at least pride in the moment and the supporters above anything else. And then if the results go our way and we get 3 points, that would be the most ideal end outcome on the day. But look, there is still more to come for this season. 5 matches remain, an opportunity to at least impress or get us excited for the summer and the possibility of a new season, because at least at that point, everybody's back at 0 and nobody is on top of the table unless you start with AFC Bournemouth as the way to get into the first spot before the season starts. But I think thanks to everybody who joined us on another live stream. We really enjoyed doing it. We're going to most likely do another one before or at the end of the season. So you can always subscribe, join us on YouTube. Appreciate everybody who left comments and kept the conversation going. Thanks to producer Jake for getting involved on the weekend too. As always, we appreciate 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can sign up for our free newsletter. You can join us on our Discord community. And that's going to do it for this one. So thank you for joining. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.